All right, so now we are going to put filling in our cake because everybody knows the cake is just a delivery system for frosting. And since we're going to put the fondant on the outside and it's not everybody's favorite to eat, we're going to put the good stuff on the inside. So tonight we're going to be making a cake. We're going to be making a yellow cake with chocolate buttercream on the inside. So first thing you need is your cardboard cake round. It's the same size as the cake that you baked. The cake that we're doing tonight is a 9-inch cake, and so we have a 9-inch cake board. You want to make sure that your really yummy soft filling stays on the inside of the cake, and so we want to use a stiffer buttercream frosting as like a little wall to hold the filling on the inside so you don't get puffy sides. This is our special recipe here at Designer Cakes, but you can use a really good recipe that you can use is the Wilton recipe that you can find online or in anywhere that Wilton anything is sold. You can find the Wilton buttercream recipe. You can switch out the butter for shortening and switch out any milk it may call for water. And then it can stay at room temperature without having to be refrigerated if there's no dairy products in it. So if it's just shortening and water and flavor, then you have a very stable buttercream that will hold your filling in. This is not something that I prefer to eat, and we never use this as a filling. We use this as our structural support, if you will, to give some rigidity to the cake and to make it all smooth and level and straight. So that's all we use this frosting for. So what we want to start with is putting a little bit of it on your board, because we want your cake to stay stuck to the board, and then using your offset spatula to just kind of spread it around to make like a little layer of glue, if you will, for your cake to stick to. All right, so now you've got your cakes that have already been cut in half and put in either the refrigerator or the freezer. And when you're making a tiered cake like this with layers, you always want to make sure that the baked side is down and then the baked side of the other one is up. So you always want the crust of the cake to be on the outside. So we're going to take this top layer off and move it over here and take the bottom. See, that's where it was cooked. We want that one to be on the bottom. We want the bottom to be down and the bottom to be up. So if you've got two cakes cut in half, bottom down, bottom up, always. So right, so then you want to center it on your board. Make sure it's nice and centered. You don't want that cake hanging off one side or the other because you want it to be very clean. So then we're going to go ahead and use our disposable piping bag and our number 7 large round tip to make a little wall around the edge. The best way to do it is to let it fall out of the bag. Keep even pressure on your bag and just let it fall out. If you try to put it, like pipe it right onto the cake, you will often make a big mess and it won't be very even. So if you just kind of apply even pressure, make sure your bag's always twisted up like this so that frosting is not going out the back of your bag, because then you lose your pressure. So you always make sure it's twisted and that you're just doing an even little wall of frosting around the edge of your cake so that it looks like that. Because I am the way I am and I like everything to be very even, I like to measure my filling. So different fillings weigh different amounts, and so we're going to just eyeball the first one. We want that filling to be about as thick as our wall. So we're going to hit 0 on or tear on the scale and then just put some filling in there. We use our chocolate filling here to, and I've done this a lot so I kind of know what it's supposed to look like. All right, so that looks good. If it's too much, we'll take some out. If it's not enough, we'll add more. But we want our filling to be right level with that little wall of frosting that we just put on there. So the best way to spread your filling out, especially a stiff filling like this chocolate buttercream, is to kind of just push out toward the edges, and don't ever drag your spatula past the edge of your filling, or you can pull cake up into your filling, and then you've got crumb filled frosting. So it's best if you just kind of push it out, and whenever you're going to take your spatula away, pull it back. Instead of pulling it across your frosting, just kind of push and pull it back out. So we want to push that filling out to the edge, and it looks as if we have this is a very good amount. And if you don't like a lot of filling, you can put less. If you like more, you can add a little more to your wall. But you don't want this filling being on the outside of your cake ever. You always want it to only be on the inside. It looks like we have a little bit too much here, so we're going to put some back in the bin. All right. And if you're a beginner and you don't have any good frosting recipes, you can just use a can of frosting from the store if you want. It's a little bit softer than some other fillings, but it'll still work if you're a beginner and you don't have a lot of recipes, or if you just don't have the time, or if you don't want to make it. So that looks good to me. So you want to make it nice and even to where, you know, looks good. So then we're going to take our next layer of cake, and I personally like to turn it upside down. And because then you're not left with like an hourglass cake, because the top's always a little skinnier than the bottom. So put that one on, and you want to push it down, make sure there's no big like air gaps, and that it's all still pretty level on there. And then take your spatula with your buttercream frosting on it, which you want to keep separate from your spatula with your filling on it. And then you want to make sure that none of your chocolate is on the outside of your cake. You only want to see white frosting on the outside of your cake. You do not want to see any of that filling creeping out, because otherwise you will have a mess on your hands, and it affects how stable your cake is when you get that soft filling mixed in with your more stable buttercream frosting on the outside. All right, so now on to the next level. Once again, letting the frosting fall out of your piping bag rather than forcing it into position. You just kind of let it fall out and drop onto the cake. All right, so we put 12 ounces of frosting in the last layer. So we're going to put 12 ounces of frosting on this layer too, so then when it's cut, every layer looks the same. All right. Now I like to be very specific with my filling. All right. All right, so once again, we're gonna push that filling out toward the edges of the cake, making sure that you don't push it over the edge or get it too mixed in with that white wall of buttercream around the edge.
So say you accidentally smash it into the white, is there a way to fix it?
You just have to be really careful and kind of pull it back with your spatula. Yeah. Because there have been times where you get a little crazy and push the white off the edge and the chocolate goes out. You just kind of have to use your spatula, pull it back in, and just be really careful. You may have to throw away part of that edge and put a new little edge once you've pulled your filling back into the center. Okay, so now we've got another layer on. It looks good. And then you want to take the top of this second cake and turn it upside down as well. And when your cakes are frozen, they thaw out super quickly, but it also helps set the filling on the inside. It makes the filling cool faster on the inside, which also makes for a more stable cake. Because when you're doing a fondant cake, that is one of the most important things, is that your cake is stable and that it's straight and that it's level. Because fondant takes the shape of whatever is underneath it. It doesn't make it better. It looks exactly like what's underneath it. So if what's underneath it doesn't look good, it's not going to look good. It's like taking a girl with an ugly personality and thinking that makeup is going to make her look better. You know, until she's pretty on the inside, no amount of makeup is going to make her beautiful. So, all right, and the same with the cake. All right, so here we are to our last layer. Once again, letting it fall out with even pressure on your piping bag. I know, I'm sure I'm making this look easier than it is, but do it a few times and you'll be a pro too. All right, so back to the scale, zeroing it out, and putting another 12 ounces of frosting on your third layer. Oh wow, I went a little crazy on that one. Okay. Oh my goodness.
Now, is the chocolate refrigerator cold or room temperature right now?
This one, it's half and half. I got it out of the refrigerator and warmed it up. And so it's a little bit stiff. If it was fully at room temperature, it would be much softer.
Room temperature would be best then.
Room temperature is easiest to work with.
Okay.
For sure.
Okay.
But sometimes if it's too soft, then you can, sometimes if it's too soft, it makes your cake want to slide around. And so I like it to be a little on the stiff side when putting it on. So if you're putting like a mousse filling or like strawberries and whipped cream, sometimes those are the scary ones that, like, yeah, those are the scary ones that your cake can get slippery and you have to be careful with those. So, and that's the hard part, because those fillings, you know, some of the custards and the whipped creams and the mousses, they're really, really tasty. But sometimes they don't make for a super stable cake. Does that make sense? And so if you want your cake to be more stable, it's best to use stable filling. And a buttercream is always a nice stable filling. If you're going to use mousse, it's best if you put some extra gelatin in with the chocolate when you melt it, to make sure that it's nice and stable. All right, so now we're going to take the bottom and put on the top. So all of the crust is now on the outside. Top, bottom, everything is crust, because this is way more sturdy than the soft cake on the inside, so it makes it easier to work with. At this point, you want to check it, and I always like to get down eye level with it and make sure that it's level, and you can kind of push on it because your filling is still soft in there, and so you're going to be able to manipulate it a little bit. So, you know, we're looking pretty good there, right? Sometimes I'll actually get an actual level out put it on the cake. But your cake doesn't have to be completely perfect, because you can fix a lot of imperfections with the crumb coat layer, which we'll show you in the next segment. But this one, you know, it looks fairly good, right? Mm-hmm. Fairly level, fairly straight. Make sure all that white frosting is all nice and smoothed out. Looks pretty good, right? Mm-hmm. Of course, it's still not smooth enough for fondant, so there's another layer after this point. But you do not want your cake to dry out, so once again, you get your plastic, and you can use the same plastic that you have had the cake previously wrapped in. And the way that I like to do it is, I like to do it really, really smooth on the cake. Some people like to throw it on there and make a big old mess, but you can't see what the cake looks like if you do that. So if you put the plastic wrap on really, really smoothly, you can still see what your cake looks like. And so in this instance, and the reason that you want to know what it looks like is because once this cake cools, it's stuck like that. It's not going to be able to be moved. So if you put this cake in a refrigerator and it gets tilted when you put it in the refrigerator, it's going to chill, tilted, and it will never, ever go back straight. So you want to make sure that it is straight when it goes in the fridge, and so it'll be straight when it comes out of the fridge. So once you've got it all wrapped up, if it's slanting or being crooked, you can start manipulating it once it's wrapped up, and push it and make sure that that is nice and straight and level, and that it looks really, really good. All right, so now we're done with this section. We're going to put this in the fridge, and then once it's cooled to the center, then we're going to come back and crumb coat it.